We did it, which is amazing. And if you want to know what the we is, and the we is us collectively, our residents, our staff, both personal and central, our county government employees, we did it. This is a tremendous accomplishment. And the it is we passed not one, but two budgets in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, in the midst of an economic fallout that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, in the midst of a racial reckoning following the killings and murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Fanon Burhay, and so many others. We did this. I echo the thanks to the President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, to Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, and to the Governor and our state legislature, Speaker Jones, and Leader President Ferguson, and all of our delegation. This is a much better budget, and these remarks are more jovial than they would have been if not for all of those individuals stepping up and passing the CARES Act and passing the rescue plan and providing critical and fighting for critical support. Our congressional delegation, Congressman Trone and Sarbanes and Raskin and Cardin and Van Hollen, for all they did to push and put us on a foundational track for recovery and gave us a chance. I want to thank my colleagues. Each and every one of you has stepped up in areas of expertise and care and concern. And you heard it displayed in all the items that were highlighted that are in this budget and many, many more that weren't. I want to thank our central staff who's worked right up to the wire today, to get us what we need so that we can do our job on behalf of the residents that we're elected to serve. I want to thank my staff, and we've had a rocky road these last few weeks. Cecily Thorne, my chief of staff, and all of my staff, Pam, Luckett, Seamus, LaTroy, who started up, Lily. We've had people in and out again, and it's been tough, but everyone has stepped up for each other. So I just really want to thank you all for that. And I want to thank our county employees. You have stepped up in ways immeasurable. Many have gotten sick, several have lost their lives, but you've stepped up, and really this budget, most of it funds you and the services you provide through programs for our residents. And you've stepped up in big ways, and you haven't missed a beat. And we're thankful that in this budget as well, that's recognized as we've funded contracts and allowed for appropriate increases. This budget lays a great foundation for recovery. And we have an opportunity coming out of it to really have an equitable recovery. There's much more work to do, obviously, but it does lay a strong, strong foundation. So just reflecting on some of the things we did in this budget, in this year, we declared racism a public health crisis, naming a root cause for the deep inequities and disparities that this pandemic has shown. And we took action in this budget, implementing the bill that we passed, led by Councilmember Navarro, on racial equity and social justice, and looking in a real way for the first time. And we need to go deeper, but at racial equity in these items, as we've stood up our own capacity on both sides of the street, in the executive and in the council. We've set up these regional hubs, which we're all so excited about, where you have institutions that have been doing the work for decades, and some that gave out their first bag of groceries a year ago, who now are feeding thousands, providing diapers, COVID-19 tests, and vaccinations. These hubs have served as critical resources to our residents and will continue to do so into the future. We fund those in this budget. We fully funded, as was mentioned, our school system in Montgomery College, and recognize the important role they play and have played as our students and families deal with the anxiety and the stress and the learning loss and the mental health issues of this last year. And we've stepped up and recognized that in their budget, and want to thank them for all their work. We funded, as was mentioned, double funded safe routes to schools to ensure that our students, when we go back to full capacity in the fall, can safely return. And we put us on a plan to nearly cut in half the time it's going to take to assess and fix our routes and walk sheds leading up to our schools. We funded WorkSource Montgomery so they can continue their important work to partner with the county and our local businesses and our state and nonprofits to connect residents to employment, which we know is going to be so critical as we come out of this recession and as we come out with so many people who are unemployed. We also funded a big shout out for the $185,000 and maybe more to Summer Rise, a program I had the honor to stand up a few years ago as our students get work-based learning experiences this summer. And Councilmember Reamer mentioned, and others have mentioned, the expanded summer surge for after-school programs with our recreation department and community partners that is going to be needed now more than ever. We funded 6 new mobile crisis units as alternatives to police response when we have residents who are dealing with mental health crises or behavioral health crises. And we've committed to police-free schools as we continue our efforts to reimagine our public safety system and eliminate the disproportionate and unnecessary police interactions that lead, unfortunately, sometimes to death and to a lowering of trust in our communities. We restored funding to the 21st Century Library Enhancement Program. And as our libraries open on June 1st on a phased capacity, we will be trying out and continuing to innovate in the area of Open Plus, which will allow our libraries to be open in non-traditional hours. And we plussed up that funding because we know our libraries are going to be so important as we work to recover and as a community gathering spot into this next year. And in line finally with the unusual year that it's been, as we dealt with the CIP today, it was an example of the sausage making. And despite strong projected growth by the Federal Reserve, this budget really isn't over. Inequality, we know, has deepened over the last year, and many of our residents still face a very uncertain economic future. So appropriately, we will be reviewing and adding budget items throughout the summer, maybe into the fall, as we continue to make critical investments as funds are available to help us truly have an equitable recovery for all of our residents and for our economy. And that's going to be critical. So I look forward to, along with all of my fellow colleagues, I want to give a special shout out to Councilmember Rice and to the SWAG, the Student Wellness Advisory Group, which is one example of these investments that we have all committed to making when they come back and tell us what our students need in place of police, in addition to feeling safe and whole, physically, emotionally, socially, the supports we need to make in their schools. That's one example of something we've all committed to coming back and doing. So much work remains. I know I'm confident that we can meet those challenges. And this budget lays a great foundation. I want to thank the county executive as well for a starting point and thank all my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.